about the conference itself? What have you thought of the other talks that you've seen and the people that you've been able to meet here today?
It's been great, right? I mean, everyone's been very interactive. Lots of people coming up and asking us questions, but not only that, we've learned a lot as well. You know, you always learn from others. There's always something you can learn no matter who you're talking to, and it's great to be able to share our experiences with others so hopefully they take something away that they can learn.
Yeah, it was great to hear John's keynote presentation and to see the face behind the Phoenix Project book, a really great read, and meeting other people from different industries who are solving problems in similar ways. Yeah. Really interesting.
That's really cool. All right, thanks guys. We'll enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks, you.
Nathan.
All right.
Okay, the divine and felonious nature of cybersecurity, otherwise known as Introduction to DevSecOps. I am John Willis. The best place to find me is Botchkaloop. The hardest place to find me is Botchkaloop, but that's what it is. Twitter, Gmail, just about everything. A GitHub project. You know, I'm not going to bore you with all this stuff. I've done a lot of stuff, and this was just the last 11 years. Prior to that, I did like really crazy stuff with mainframes and large distributed systems. I was the 9th person in Chef. I think, where is he back there? My claim to fame is I hired Matt Ray, so say hi to Matt Ray out there. The biggest thing I probably did more recently on the technical side is about 4 years ago I started, I built like a VXLAN overlay. It was basically scalable networking for Docker. Docker only had bridge networks. We knew it was going to grow insanely, that type of network was just not going to scale. So we took like the Nicira approach. In fact, before VMware and NSX even thought about doing this, we did this. So we built, if this makes any sense, a VXLAN overlay with a vSwitch for Docker. We lasted 3 months, Docker acquired us. So I spent almost 2.5 years at Docker. I've been out for a year in a company called SJ Technologies. As Nathan mentioned, me and my really good friend David Edwards have been doing the Labor of Love podcast for 8 years now. And then I was I consider one of the progenitors of DevOps days. I was the only American in the first DevOps day, and then the handbook. And also we do, if you haven't seen the DevOps Enterprise Summit, so if you have focus in enterprise, it's Gene Kim, who at the Phoenix Project called DevOps Ember. This will be our 5th or 6th year in Vegas, this year in November, and we've been running one in Europe. We're trying to run one down here, but it's a lot of work. Only the last, if only maybe, but definitely a shameless plug. I did this thing, it came out at the beginning of this year. It's an audio only, me and Gene Kim did it. It was probably a top 5 project I've ever done, including startups. It's an audio only. If you really want to geek out on the history of what are all the convergent things that made up DevOps, like lean and safety and other disciplines, Peter Senge, if that means anything to you. It's 11 hours. It's not for the weak of heart. It's audio only, but it's people who have listened to it, who do geek out on stuff, who love it. It's only 1 Audible credit. Let me say it again. 1 Audible credit. So that's it. All right, so let's get started. So I wanted to start off with the kind of felonious nature of cybersecurity. So, and I'm going to go through, like, why do I say it? So at the end, I'm going to tell you a story, what I think is kind of a divine story, if you will. But we'll go ahead and walk through the mess we're in. And so, how many people have heard of Mark Andreessen? Right? You might know him as he just made 30 cents on a dollar on $7 billion because he was the first investor in GitHub. He just sold to Microsoft, right? So, but he, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, he made this statement in a Wired magazine article. He said, "Software is eating the world," right? I don't think anybody would disagree with that at this point. But like, if you start talking to like white hat security people, they're not negative about this statement, but they're just like concerned that they see this as software is infecting the world, right? And it's a paradox, and I'll talk about the paradox in a little bit, right? Like, we can't turn back. And so, so I did a version of this at Swamp Up, Jay Farg's kind of community event. And the week before, there's a couple of sources I've been watching. One is, if anything in this presentation interests you, then there's a report. It's actually the 3rd year now. The 18 wasn't out when I did this. It's by Sonatype. It's called the Software Supply Chain Report. And the numbers in it are incredible about what's going on. And Sonatype owns Maven Central for Java. So they got the best view of what's going on if you think Java. And by the way, you know, Java, I mean, most of you should know this, that Java in the enterprise is the predominant, still today, language being developed and used for almost everything from an enterprise commercial standpoint. All right, so I took a snapshot, and so you should definitely follow these reports. But I took a kind of an aggregate data from that the 17 report, including module counts, which just tells you, keeps track of what's getting downloaded. And notice there on the top, so the week prior to that SwampUp presentation, 1.5 million Java modules were downloaded that week. But here's the kicker, and I was going to, I should have done this, but I was afraid it might be lower and it wouldn't make as good a point. But 5 million node modules in a week, right? And if you haven't been paying attention, Node, the attack vectors in Node are like pretty bad these days. All right. The other one is that in the 2018 report, they've upped the 8% to 10%. So in general, in the Java Maven Central, if you take a snapshot at any given time, 10% of the modules there have vulnerabilities in it. So you pretty much guarantee 10% off the bat if you're just doing anything with Java. And by the way, if you think any other language is better, like, leave now. There's some other metadata from Black Duck, but I mean the data goes on and on and on. I mean, if you know, 28K vulnerabilities in 2017. Most customers think they're using 2x more OSS than they thought. The truth is, I'll tell you the story. I'll tell you that story right now. So, good friend of mine, Topo Pal, he was the first fellow at Capital One. Capital One in the U.S. is considered poster child for fintech excellence. They've done amazing things. Across the board, if you go Google any of their presentations, they're pretty phenomenal what their accomplishments are. He was asked earlier this year by the CTO to find out how much open source that they use at Capital One. Now, in Capital One, 70% of all the code, so I think they have like 3,000 developers. 70% of all the code that Capital One, so this is a code-centric company, right? 70% of their code is written in Java. Anybody want to, I'm going to give just a couple of, like 30 seconds for the guessing game. Anybody want to guess what percentage was open source and what percentage was in-house written by Capital One Java developers? 90%. That's a common answer. Anyone else? That's the inference. Not right. Hey, it's 99. 99%. Now, this is not going to be different than any other bank. I can tell you that right now. It's not like they were like, hey, you know, we're going for 98, and we won. No, that's not how it works. Here's the second thing that he did. He said, well, I'm not going to stop there. He looked to see if how much of that 99% they were actually using. And I won't make you guess, it was 10%. So 99% of all the code that they're running to run their bank is open source, of which they're only using 10%. And Sonatype, who has pretty accurate data, who manages Maven Central, says that right off the bat, 10% is vulnerable. Right there, imagine the footprint of vulnerabilities and things that can go wrong. This one, I love this one. It's actually called Dynaroot. The name of these things are like terrible, but it was it's 2018 111. Can anybody like see what the fix is? So shout out what the fix is. 4, 3, 2. The dash R, 2 characters. So by the way, this was a vulnerability that opens up what's called remote command execution. By the way, I don't know if you heard of the Equifax breach that was in RC. Most of them, in fact, last Thursday I'll talk about, there was another struts to Java vulnerability just Thursday at RC, right? So RC basically are ways that you can escape into a command. And if it has to be an authorized system, you're done, right? And so this is basically the DNS client for every Red Hat distribution. And because they didn't have the dash R in the original code, you could basically escape character, a command, a script in there, and Bob's your uncle, as they say. I mean, I'm just trying to emphasize how ugly this is right now, right? And the thing like Capital One, I'm going to go back. I got a punchline on the next slide. The thing like Capital One, like you can't go back, right? The paradox is that the open source abstractions have gotten us to a place where we can do incredible things. Startups can come out of nowhere and create whole businesses that put big companies out of business. You all in this room are probably doing incredible things, and I would say 90% of that is because somebody else built incredible abstractions. I mean, any of the clouds that you use, they're all abstractions in open source. right? So this is great. And commerce has taken advantage of worldwide commerce, increase in jobs, all these things. The paradox is we get more vulnerable every minute. We pay a deep penalty for that. The win is, hopefully, the things I'm going to talk about in this presentation, to at least try to catch up. So this is a joke is I do my day job, I hang out with my family, everybody goes to bed, and then I bring up Shodan to find friends that are running default Jenkins in the wild. Friends don't let friends run default install Jenkins. Now, the truth is, the hobbyist people have yelled and screamed at me, we fixed that! I'm like, okay, calm down. The point is, you go like, oh, that's my friend's startup. Oh my God, he's on Amazon, he's running a default Jenkins install. And don't think, once they're in one of your systems, you're done. Like, if you otherwise think, and I'll point this out later, I get like insane when people tell me, well, that's a test system, John. It doesn't face the internet. Like, yeah. Tell that to the hacker who gets in your building. This is a little outdated, but things haven't really changed. Verizon does something called the DVIR, and again, it's a little older, but basically in 2015, they said that 97% of the exploits were known to 10 CVEs, common vulnerabilities and exploitations, which is it's tracked around the world, but certainly it's tracked mostly by the US government, NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, the US government, vulnerabilities. And so 97% were 10, and here's the real kicker, what they don't say in the paragraph, 8 of them were over 10 years old. So we suck. So while your senior executives are trying to hire some Cambridge or MIT student that knows mathematics and like to figure out how to perimeterize this thing, your organization probably has, hundreds of known vulnerabilities that have been known for 10 years. 8 months, or actually almost a year after the Equifax breach, Sonatype showed me a report that 40,000 organizations were still running that vulnerability. Right? And that was on CNN. I mean, you had to be sleeping under a rock not to hear about the Equifax breach. And almost a year later, 40,000 organizations, according to Central, were still running that same vulnerability. If you're really, really a geek, don't go here. You start reading SEC filings for fun, right? And the most famous one ever, which isn't really related to security, but it's an important one, is the Knight Capital. How many people heard of Knight Capital? So, a couple, right? So Knight Capital was a high-frequency trading company on Wall Street, second largest NYSE exchange. They basically, should have Chef, right? But hey, they were deploying to 8 servers. The sysadmin missed the 8th server, only did 7. This is a very short version. There's an SEC filing that describes this beautifully. And basically, in 40 minutes, they lost like almost $400 million. 24 hours, they're out of business. 75-year-old company, right? So I'm waiting for the one for Equifax, but there is a good one about the engineering director who dumped his stock once he found out the breach. But it tells you the timeline, and he's going to jail, right? But like, everybody's arguing about the timeline at Equifax. Well, I'm going to take the SEC filing that's basically trying to put this guy in jail. And so let's talk about the Equifax breach. How many people have not heard of Equifax? Not a place to be shot, honestly. Okay, a couple, good. Thank you for raising your hand. Well, so it was a big Java vulnerability. It was a parsing routine. It was just RCE. It was an RCE thing where the structs and structs2 library for Java is like you use it for so many reusable routines, particularly parsing stuff and other things. And so for some HTML parsing, there was this vulnerability that had been there forever, but it was where you could basically put a pound hashtag in a script in it and throw it into the HTML and it would execute. And it had to be an unauthorized system again. You're dead. So it was a big deal. It was actually, in this terminology, it was a critical, which is a 10. 1 to 10 is the rating system. So they said Homeland Security was actually calling companies saying, hey, next, you need to know about this, right? So Equifax, again, this is not, like I got friends who work in Equifax, I'm not trying to punching bag Equifax. This is just plain vanilla, big company because of the complexity and the hygiene and all the things that we've inherited over years. So this is not a beat up Equifax, because this definitely is. They just got unlucky. So that CVE was discovered on it was discovered on the 6th, but the real the announcement was the 9th. That means when people get official, if you subscribe to a risk company or if you have a risk team, if you're a big company, you should have known about it on the 9th. The CVE was created on the 10th. Now, so even if Equifax had gotten it right in the SC filing, the a month later, Oracle patch would have laid it back over. So this is how bad we are. The quarterly Oracle patch actually had the old vulnerability, right? And again, like everybody's bad. Like it's like, oh my God, let's make fun of Oracle. Oh my God, let's make fun of Equifax. The thing is, if you read the thing, it isn't until late June that Equifax realized. Like, this is a 10. I mean, like I was just saying that this is fire engine red stuff. And late June, they start seeing some anomalous behavior. And what is another about hygiene, right? Like, you have to own it. So what they do, they went and found the egghead security genius consulting firm to come in and help them. And I don't know what they paid, but boy, if they would have paid me 1/10 of that, I would have told them, hey, look to see what your latest open vulnerabilities are. So they came in, they found out what the problem was, and that's where they started addressing it. And then again, that's where the one manager went ahead and dumped all the stock, you know, and now it's going to go to jail, right? So there was some hygiene problems at Equifax that I would argue that are not too dissimilar to anybody else in the industry. I've had this opportunity to work with a company in the U.S. called Fannie Mae. And it used to be Fannie Mae was sort of the laughingstock of IT. So federal loan, actually during the Roosevelt era, this was created to help Americans get in houses more aggressively. People who really couldn't afford a house, right? The whole great, the New Deal stuff, right? I digress. But the thing is, I want to tell you about like something that I feel really strong about DevOps, not just DevSecOps. DevOps, if you ever have the opportunity to read DevOps Handbook, you'll see that we talk about lean obsessively. And the reason we talk about lean obsessively is because almost everything that we do that is magical about DevOps comes from lean, and it can be isomorphically mapped to what Toyota did, which, by the way, if you didn't know, for 40 years they decimated the car market. Not just beat, decimated, like pounded into the ground. General Motors. And they did it for a lot of reasons, but let me give you the punchline. Like, they did it because of their culture. More specifically, they did it because they had this true north. If you want to read a fantastic book about how Toyota is different than everybody else, it's a book by Mike Rothman called Toyota Kata. Now, he doesn't talk about IT, but he tells this idea of how everybody thought that. And they had a true north. It was single-piece flow. I won't get into the details of that, but the point was everybody in that company understood every day of the week, every hour of the day, why they were in that building. And they did. It was part of their culture. It was part of the culture code, part of behavior. It was single-piece flow. So every improvement, everything they did, and I'll talk something later about one of the things that are unique about them. So I look at companies now, if I visit them, do they have just the resemblance of a true north? And every once in a while, one will pop up. SpaceX, if you have, they have a true north. Get a person on Mars. If you ask them SpaceX, you ask them like, hey, you want to buy this product? I'd like to hire this person. You have to answer the question, does it get us to Mars faster? Through the whole thing. There's a couple others. I happened to stumble into a true north company here, accidentally, you know. And so if you read that thing, it says, we have vision to be America's most valued housing partner. And I've met the C-level team, I've met a lot of people there, and they all talk that same language. They actually seem to know that that's their true north. So, on March 9th, this woman, Citra Lango, who ran AppSec, which is interesting, she was a Java developer with no security background, was asked if she wanted to take the role of a manager of an AppSec team. And she decided, I got a little stuff about her later, well, how would a Java, if you all only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So her software delivery chain basically looked like a Java developer's software security. So literally, she treated the whole software delivery as a Java problem, a business software development problem. So she gets the notification with the CISO. They sit down, they have a war room, they invite the executive team, the CEO, the whole team, on the 9th. That was the day it was officially announced. They put a POC together. She basically had a hypothesis that they could remediate this thing in less than a day and a half. Now, she didn't wait the next day to find out if IBM or Palo Alto or let me check with our vendors. She didn't just say, let's bring in like the smartest DC security analyst firm. You know what she did? She wrote a little shell script that just did the vulnerability hashtag command. Got infrastructure involved, and they just paralyzed it to run against every URL, internal and external system. It actually takes a lot longer to do that when people are panicking and scared. You think, oh, why didn't that take 10 minutes? It actually took a day and a half. But here's the big thing that she did. So she had the script. Basically, anyone that punched through, she just wrote a script that read Etsy passport. And the output was the file. Let's go see if this has got to be one of the ones that we're going to get and fix. And they fixed it. They had full remediation in a day and a half. But here's the true north story. She's sitting there, this is pre-Equifax. Now, Equifax, now we all know 150 million records out in the wild, right? She knew. And she went to the executive team and said, one day before I do this POC to correct and remediate this thing, I need us to take down the production loan application. Take it down until it's fixed. But since you're how long? I think a day and a half, I'm not sure. But it's got to go down. And she challenged the executive team to say, if we really are who we say we are, America's trusted, we're the most valued housing partner. I'm telling you, we'll have 15 million, maybe 100 million loan applications in the wild, and we're full of shit. So you have to decide right now whether we're full of shit or not. And they did. They shut it down. A day and a half, she had full remediation, right? A tale of two cities. So it always goes back to culture. The list goes on. Later that year, in spring, not the same thing, but an RCE, okay, in spring. And again, not to beat up Pivotal, I have dear friends that work there. This could be anybody. It took them, it was published in 2092, they corrected it in March. I mean, the Java world spring is like this is big game hunting. Just Thursday. Shout out to Zane and his crew. I shout out my friends. I mean, there's 100 blogs you can read about this, but there was another Struts 2 out there. Now, right now, the industry is a little better. It's basically a code, depending on how you use your coding techniques. In fact, by the way, which is really interesting is more and more I learned, good coding hygiene, even though these vulnerabilities are there, actually eliminates even the vulnerabilities that's in it, because they take advantage of, the bad people take advantage of mediocre to medium code practices. This is about namespace definitions. People took shortcuts. They didn't take shortcuts. Even the active set structure too, depending how you imported the libraries, you were vulnerable or not. So one of the things that I think about a lot now is that if I say that our industry is felonious, and if you disagree at this point, I don't know, there's no hope for you. Then I would say, okay, well, and then if you think about our industry right now, we tend to be so focused on perimeter-based security, right? Martin Casado, who invented SDN, he made this quote that we spend 80% of our spend on perimeter-based, 20% on inner perimeter. The truth is, the bad people, if you've got something in your organization, there's somebody that has a bounty for it on the dark web, and the smartest young man or woman out there is going to get it. And they're not going to be stopped by FireEye, Palo Alto. And the truth, most breaches get in because they get in the building. So not only do we spend, we also wind up having this blind spot of, well, I don't really have to worry about that because I've spent 20 million with IBM. No, again, every time I mention a vendor, think of it generically. Oh, you spent 20 million, I spent 25, right? That's our thought process, right? And that needs to change. If anything that gets me excited right now is the software delivery pipeline is the Goldilocks zone. The Goldilocks zone is too hot, too cold. Martin Casado said it was the hypervisor. Of course, he just sold a product for $1.2 billion to VMware. And like that's good, but not good enough. The place that we don't solve all our security problems but we aggressively attack the how we deliver software in the pipeline. And that gets us way farther along than we do with any other initiatives. It doesn't mean abandoning other initiatives. It just means, and then traffic patterns have changed. You know, so I'm going to just, I like 3 slides to do intro to DevOps, right, or whatever. One of the mantras of early DevOps, and this was actually before the DevOps term was coined, Werner Wargus, the CTO of Amazon, had this saying. He was being interviewed, actually, in an ACM article, and he said that at Amazon we're different than everybody else. We have this notion of you build it, you run it. That actually became the battle cry for initial DevOps, right? Like developers would build it, they'd run it, developers would have pagers, we'd build infrastructure around making sure developers could actually get stuff done. We could reduce the operational toil. Operations would enjoy being part of that delivery, but making it so the developers. And so it became the kind of the mantra. One of the things that, they talked about lean earlier, right? How many people have heard the concept of an and-on cord? Oh, quite a few, good. So in Toyota, they had this thing where there was a rope. And anybody on the line, for any reason, could pull the rope and stop the line. Right? So fair enough, right? And then the metaphor today is the break build, right? And we'll get to that. But here's the real kicker. When they stopped the line, the floor manager would come up to them. The first thing they would say is thank you. Before they even knew what happened. Because they said it was a learning opportunity. And even if it was like bad lighting, it was a mistake, that was a learning opportunity. And there's tons of information about learning organizations, and that's at the core of how you become a learning organization. Don't have time to go any more in detail. Right, so understand that. And so how that's manifested for us, the end-on cord metaphorically in software delivery, actually Jez Humble, Dan North, and Chris Reed in 2006, I love to repeat this, 2006 came up with this diagram. They were way ahead of their time. And they said, well, this is what, this is basically what kind of an end-on card looks like in software delivery. Developer checks something in, gate, red, go back, gate, red, go back. And over time, you literally start getting faster and more resilient in this model. And actually, what's her face? Melody McKesson, who runs basically engineering for platform. Basically, it was 2 years ago. This is probably 300 million now. 150 million automated tests per day. Right? That's how you create resilience. There was a story, a lean story about Toyota plant in Kentucky that produced 2,200 cars a day. And an industry analyst went down there and said, how do you produce 2,200 cars a day? My God. They said, it's quite simple. We pull the end-on code 5,000 times. But if you get that logic, that's Google. That's basically 150 million end-on card pulls a day. That's how you get the result. Whether I like Google or hate Google or Mark, it doesn't really matter. There's nobody on the planet who's been doing infrastructure the way I have done for 15 years. Just unquestionably. Like no comparison. Amazon owns the market in objects. Like anybody who's known both inside what it looks like in Google and what it looks like in Amazon, not a comparison. Craziest thing that ever happened to Google was Dvir. Because they explained to the world how Google ran. Oh, hey, thanks, Dvir. Here's Kubernetes. Right? Not that simple, but kind of sort of. Right? So read the SRE book. If you haven't read that, SRE will blow your mind. You might actually have a viscerally negative, like, oh my God, throw up reactions to some of the things they say. But it's because the way they run is different than anybody else. And so for me, everything I think about is Google scale. When I go to customers, why aren't you on Google? You like Kubernetes, right? Yeah. Okay, why aren't you on Google? Again, that's another whole presentation. But right now, security is the bottleneck. We've done a tremendous job of getting developers and operations and QA and other teams to collaborate, to get developers, get out of developers' way, create resilient delivery pipelines. And here we are sitting in 2018 and we stink at security. So basically, that's where this DevSecOps thing comes in. So why not throw the abstraction of a pipeline, or on the pipeline, our security structure? But not just piecemeal. At the end of the day, we want to be holistic about this, the way we were DevOps. I'm working on the DevSecOps handbook now with incredible authors. And Shannon Leese is one of them, and I'll tell you why she's so incredible. You haven't heard of her in a few minutes. And the thing is that the interesting thing about DevSecOps, and here one other thing too, if you're having constraints or anxiety about the name, please go to that side of the room. Because the people who want to talk about how to fix the problem, not argue about the name, join me on that side of the room. The name has been chosen by somebody already who has incredible integrity. I'm not going to argue about whether we should use the name or not. I'm going to follow the, let's go ahead and, because this happened in cloud. We spent like the first couple of years of cloud arguing about what a cloud was. It just takes away from the, like, let's fix the problem. It's a name that works. Shut up. I wrote a blog article about that. Just shut up. So here's the thing, right? I visit a lot of companies, and I constantly have to come in and, hey, John, can you look at our DevOps? And, you know, as if I'm like a rating system or something, right? So imagine I come in a company, like, John, this is so amazing. Please come in and visit us. And I said, okay, great. And they come in and they say, well, here's what we're doing. Like, the developers got really good plugins. We're doing awesome stuff. And life's really good for the developer stories, through ideation, awesome version control, pain in the ass. You know, just, that thing just seems to be, that Git, developers hate those commands. Okay. Scratch my head a couple times. Build, same thing. Developers tell me every time they get one of those red alerts, it pisses them off. Right? You know, and so we had to turn it off. We just got furious. But when we get to testing, we've got this Kubernetes Selenium. If you hadn't heard about this thing, if you're using Selenium, like you gotta go like leave now and get Selenium. It's a basically dynamic server for Selenium servers that run basically containers containerized under Kubernetes, all encapsulating. And it's like, well, if you have any scale problems with running test systems, like this thing's amazing. So let's say there isn't a company like this, I'm making it up. They're running that, they run Chef, we're like, oh my god, we chefed everything, and we're like awesome. They're like, well, how do I tell you? You kind of suck. You know, like that whole shift left thing, you can't shift left, and there's nothing in a bucket to the left. Right? So, but like that's where we are in security today. We're like, we got like maybe Qualsys here, we got something there. Like, okay, that's great, start. But if you want to get this idea that development, security has to become just like operations and QA, the meta, the automation, the guardrails, everything for developers to get this done and now be secure. That's just about speed and resilience. Right? We prove to the world, there's data that proves to the world that we can, under certain behavior patterns, we can go faster and be more resilient. In fact, faster we go, we actually get more resilient. Most people accept that as a general principle because of DevOps. I'm telling you, it's the same, it's a redo for security. And people go, John, the problem developers are worried that security is going to slow down. No, we've done this already, trust me. You'll be more secure. Mary Poppendick, who basically wrote Lean Software Development, was the first person to actually introduce Lean and software development. Basically asked this question years ago: how long does it take you to get one line of code through your system? Because that is the test for how good you are. So the question now is, how long does it take a vulnerability, a zero-day vulnerability to get through your system? Right? So there's a lot of meta here. I'm going to probably run out of, I'm going to have to go a little faster. I never do this on time. The DevOps handbook has a whole chapter about some things to think about. I did want to talk about Shannon Leese. She's already into it. She's one of my co-authors, DevSecOps handbook. She's amazing. She's incredible. Google anything she does. Watch everything she says. She runs a 50-person red team at Intuit. Intuit's a bank. You obviously probably know what it is, but she's 50 people red team. That's an internal red team that is their full-time job is to hack themselves, right? And so she's done an incredible amount of stuff aggregating. I mean, she's beyond anybody else I've ever met so far in security. How she's thinking about it. Now, she does have a 50-person red team, which makes it actually easy to do things. But she spends a lot of time talking about the economies and the motivations of the attackers, and who they are, why they do the things they do. And those ones in the red are the really, really, really bad people. And those people are incredibly sophisticated. And by the way, if those people want to get in your building, I don't know what you do. There's no perimeter thing that's going to stop them. They're going to get in. In fact, what they're going to look for is that default Jenkins server. And they don't even know what Jenkins does, and they don't care. That's sitting there and somebody didn't kill and left open, it was default, somebody wanted to do a 1-hour prototype or something, but it stayed up on an Amazon account, and you think you have VPC def. No, you don't. So one of the things she does, and this is where I really get excited about it, most people, when you ask them, how do you track your security, what are your metrics for security? A lot of people will say things like, defect density, or KLOC, or highs and critical vulnerabilities per 10,000 lines of code, or they'll basically look at decreasing of how many CVEs, highs and criticals. The highs are basically starting at 8, 9, or 7, 8, 9, 10, right? 8, 9, 10. Are you decreasing the amount you're pulling? Are you decreasing how long you have them in your system, right? Those kind of things. She's like, no. What I do is I track adversary retention. So it's like the thing, if somebody's a crook, right, they see the first house, there's a fence, there's 2 big, large, meat-looking dogs, there's big cameras, and it looks like they got an alarm system. Next one, it's a barbed wire fence, next one, no fence, a screen door, I'm going out. Right, so she tracks how well she's doing. Now, it takes a lot of work to figure out who adversaries actually are. But she's gotten over that, and then she knows how long they stay. And if they're staying less and less and less and less, the economics for them for being there are not worth it. And that's, a macro level metric, right, where really nothing else really matters. I want to talk about Fannie Mae. These slides will be up. If you Google RSA, Fannie Mae, she gave this whole presentation at RSA US earlier this year, where she talks about what she's done there. But she's basically automated everything from a shift left systems approach to security in a DevOps pipeline. This is some of their things that they've done. Now, I told you about her story, right? The other ones that had full remediation in less than a day and a half. And had no impact, if any, made for that catastrophic vulnerability that took Equifax almost down. Average days to close vulnerability, 74%. Basically, the third bullet is one I love, that 60% of their application teams are performing security tests before release. And here's the thing, that's a hard thing. I mean, you've tried this. Developers have this mindset that security, we've had this institutionalized memory muscle on security and speed are going to basically don't mix, right? And so you have those arguments and debates, right? They've gotten over. This is really cool. This is DJ Shalani. He's at Aetna. They've been running containers and immutable delivery with containers. I've done a ton of presentations over the years. Just Google me on immutable delivery, why it's so awesome. You build hermetically sealed systems from the developer. They're binary immutable all the way through. It's a lot more complicated than that just simple expression. But he's been doing this for years. In fact, I learned some of these techniques from him. Now they run what he calls basically moving target defense for security. So he's got all sorts of systems. He runs like Security Chaos Monkey. He basically has his IDS systems at perimeter notify his internal systems. And why? Because he's running containers and Kubernetes. He can either cycle them before the predator gets there, or even if they're there, they'll get cycled because they're clusters. So they're just constantly rotating. So wherever you are, you're gone. You don't know where you went. Or they actually, in some cases, will just redistribute the pipeline with under a minute. They run like basically pipeline as code, or what some people are calling clean room-like pipelines, where no human touches them. So in kind of summary of everything I just talked about, I was thinking about how do you summarize some of these things for DevSecOps. I think one of the things that comes up a lot is false positives when you start scanning. So one of the first things you wind up doing is putting a scanner in, and again, this kind of blind spot, like, which is the most expensive scanning tool? Let's get that one. But you don't, like, in good hygiene companies, buy them all. Because most of them, for example, stink. Their signal-to-noise ratio is terrible. And so what happens is an aim pattern of just throwing alerts at developers continually for security without any context. I had one team tell me that they got an SQL injection alert and they weren't making any database references in their code. right? So the thing is, you literally have to aggressively understand that if you don't deal with the signal-noise ratio of scanning and catching vulnerabilities in code, as they're sent to developers and you're creating that collaborative effort, you will lose them faster if you're sending them tons of noise, and then they'll miss the Equifax like one. You do also have to explain vulnerabilities and business impact. So if you send an alert to somebody, like, don't just say what the CVE is and tell them to go to a security website, which, by the way, developers have a really bad time going to those websites, because they're not designed for developers. Put some context in it. Like, you might even say, this is the one that brought down Equifax, by the way. Or show them what a simulated breach would look like. Put it in the context of the wiki that describes, don't rely on somebody else's, like an OWASP wiki, describe the vulnerability, or a National Institute of Standards and Technologies. Write your own. Because some of them might not matter for your particular context. That's one thing DJ Schland at Aetna does really well too. He sends everything to an AI group that does machine learning. They're like, oh, cool, more data, great. And so now they actually put things in context to be able to say, well, this is actually, even though it is really bad in the industry, it's never going to affect us because we use some, some things that we're using for pricing, insurance policies and stuff like that. They're able to integrate that in. I don't think I'm going to have a whole lot of time for this. One of the things I spend a lot of time now is what I call organizational fact finding. I've been out of Doc for about a year, and now I've spent a lot of time with CIOs, and it's really cool because I actually tell them what I'm going to find before I go looking. And they pretty much know I'm right. And then I go ahead and spend like a month with their people. I interview hundreds of people, and then tell them exactly what I told them I'm going to tell them. And one of the things that I realized is they're actually even higher than the DevOps handbook. There are these kind of archetype like problems in our industry. And so I'm actually working this through now, but to give you a little, and I'm trying to do some spectrum of it too, right? Like where are you on the spectrum? So just give you a little glimpse of what I'm going to hopefully spend more time writing about. But data center versus service center, you all know what this looks like. The places where, oh my God, you broke that system. Yeah, but it was a test system. Oh, you can't break test systems. Or I've got to wait 3 weeks to get this space in 2018. Or, like you're still, you can talk all day on about where IT is so important, but you're still in a data center mindset. Like you're still like controlling resources. So there's some person you got to go to and beg, oh my God, here's my porridge, and please give me a server today. Again, with cloud, now they're becoming cloud administrators. So it's easier, but like now you got to go talk to that cloud administrator and like beg and. Like hopefully Kubernetes, if it gets a day when you got to get a Kubernetes cluster and you got to beg somebody else Kubernetes, then I'm out, I quit. I'm definitely out of this industry. Tribal versus institutional knowledge, this is really interesting. All these CIOs of like billion-dollar corporations, John, I have to hire the people that go to Google. Well, okay, you got a couple problems now. One, you got to pay them a tremendous amount of money, which your HR won't pay you. But if you get over that, you have to create an environment that actually allows them, if you actually catch one, to want them to stay. Because what happens is, every once in a while they catch a good one. In Boston, I don't feel like going anywhere else. This is a good company, I like their story, I'm intrinsically motivated, they paid me enough, I can do big things here. I can go out to Google and just be one of a gazillion people doing big things. Sorry, I'm not picking on Google, good or bad, but they're a good marker. But then they get in, they take the shot, and they find out this is like a tribally infested organization. There's no institutional sharing knowledge. So that first week they write some code, they put in something the way they did in the last company. An hour later somebody comes over, why did you run that way? I don't know, I was just trying to never do that. But what? Then where's the code? Okay. They do something else. By the third week they're like, who do you go to? I've had people 6 months in, they tell me, John, I don't know who's in charge here. But then there's always like one person, wow, that you stumble in there like, you idiot. You just gotta go to Susie. And you go to her cubicle between 2 and 4, you bring some cookies, and you get it done. She untangles your ticket number. She basically deletes the broken, okay. They quit. quit. You know what? Screw it. I'll take that Google job. I mean, there's a whole bunch more with compliance theater. I mean, check-off systems, you know, developers, basically leaving them responsible to accept the threat modeling and threat when they have no thing, but they have, you know, they're the ones that get to check off the box saying, well, we're good, we accept this risk. Like, that's so common, and it's like, people say, when I go into a place, and I'm in there like a week, and it's like, John, everything you're saying is just common sense. Yes. Yes, it is. And then I love to quote my most famous Mark Twain quote, right? There's nothing common about common sense. One of the things I do, I'm going to get two, actually, I've got a bunch of presentations on this. I'll give you links. I do, it's actually an offshoot of ice-cream mapping where I get people to put markers in their hands. And we call it black pen, red pen, blue pen. And it's incredible. The truth just flying. You have to like fight people to get the marker out of your hand. You bring in another group to like look at what they did and like, oh, hey, this will be fun. Give me the eraser. It's brilliant. I've got some of this online, but I do want to get to what I promised, the divine, right? So I said this presentation called The Divine and Felonious Nature of Cybersecurity. You should be pretty much aware at this time of the felonious nature of what we're doing in cyber. And I could go on and on and on about stories of cyber people who don't create policy because the auditors would get in their hair. I mean, there's horrific stories in 10 plus $20 billion organizations, right? Just terrible stuff. But I'm a big fan of Bill Bryson, right? He's a travel writer. How many people heard of Bill Bryson? He wrote a book about the whole country here, so it's pretty hilarious. But he wrote a bunch. And he did one about the history of science and everything like this. And this is probably my second favorite quote in any book I've ever read. He was talking about at the time that Newton was finishing Principia, pretty much redefined the way we thought about everything. There were a couple of sailors out in South America shooting the last 2 dodo birds on the planet for fun. Like the dodo birds flew into him like, hit me, no, hit me. And he said, you would be hard-pressed, I would submit, to find a better pairing of occurrences to illustrate the divine and felonious nature of a human being. Right? And that's always stuck with me. So I'm at a cybersecurity conference late last year, and they have this attacker with a hoodie, face covered, he's in some hidden room, and he's laughing at us. Because he's telling everybody in the audience that y'all a bunch of idiots, because the last 4 banks and hospital that I attacked, I walked in the building. I tailgated. Somebody held the door. He even talked about how he would go to that location like 2 weeks before, find out how you dressed. He'd wear sneakers, suit and tie. He'd do recon. And he had a contract. He'd be like, you're a bank, he's got a contract. And he'd get in. He'd find out that there were doors on the side that people would just hold open. He'd wait for a pattern of a bunch of people in the parking lot. I was like, no offense to JP Morgan Chase, but they got this monster building in Columbus, Ohio. And there's like one main entrance. And if you happen to park on the other side of the universe, you literally wait for a crowd of people to come in, even if you're a consultant, which you're not a consultant, and you wait for a crowd of people to go in the door, and then you kind of go along, right? It happens, folks. And he's telling us that he does it. There's 4 banks. He got in the building. He found an empty set of cubicles. Sticks Raspberry Pi. And here's the other thing. I ask people all the time, do you have the same policy for your vulnerabilities in test versus production? People say, well, no, test. I'm like, why do you think test is safer? Well, it doesn't face the internet. By the way, that's where the attacker goes first. So if you ever see a modern day kill chain, right? Like they basically find that all they need is one, and trust me, you all have hundreds. One port on one system that's some bug, and it's just a bunch of leapfrogging. There's a great, we've been doing a workshop where we actually have developed through kill chains, and like you see how they do, like you find here, you get here. The diagnostic tools are really good. Thank you all you open source developers and all these tools, right? Like it's not hard to find the next, it's like it's just incrementally hopping and eventually you get to someplace. And they do. And so I was thinking about this whole tailgate thing and like how he was making fun of us, and I was thinking of the Bryson quote, and I'm almost done here. And And I was thinking, you know what, in DevOps we talk about culture, and I do it too. I'm actually one of the creators of that CAMS algorithm, the taxonomy, whatever you want to call it. We did nothing special other than it was an accident. A culture automation measurement sharing. And then I think about security, and I think about what this kid said. And I thought about like being in an institution for 10 or 15, 20 years. I started my career at Exxon. And when you don't hold the door up for somebody, what happens? You son of a bitch, you know me. I'm down the hall there. Right? Like, I mean, over time, Diane Vaughn, she wrote a book about the postmortem of the Columbia disaster. And she coined this term called normalization of deviance, where deviance just becomes normal. So in most corporations, that behavior, holding the door because you're tired of getting yelled at. And so imagine the divide. Imagine we know that the hackers are laughing at us because they walk in the building and they find that door behind, even though you got like security theater galore in the front entrance. Which is, by the way, that's the place they go. But imagine, here's the scenario. I'm making this up. Susie, she's pregnant. It's raining, it's cold, she's got 4 boxes. She's 3 steps behind you. You let the door close. Now you wait until she gets to the door. And then you're sitting there going, oh my God, I'm going to get so beat up, but I've got to start fixing this problem. We can't let anybody. And she comes up to you. Remember the Android code thing? She points to you and says, thank you for making our corporation safer, stronger. Sometimes it's that simple. Thank you very much.